Hi, and welcome back to another Save It for Parts vintage tech review. Today we have a really cool device sent to me by viewer Christine. Thank you, Christine, and I'm sorry it took so long for me to get to this, but I have been super busy, and I've just been looking for an excuse to pull this thing out and play with it. So here we have a old school vintage camcorder, and this records to tapes. Now you might be asking yourself, what's so weird about that? Old vintage camcorders from the late 1900s recorded to tapes. That was just how technology worked back in the ancient times. Well, this one records to audio tape, whereas your standard camcorder would record to a video-specific tape that was bigger, heavier, and had more data capacity. These were only ever designed for pirating music off the radio and recording your terrible GarageBand. They were not designed for the amount of information that comes in from a video camera, whereas these tapes were, and these were much more expensive. But this thing is actually designed for kids. This is a toy video camera, an actually working toy camera. I believe this is actually made by Fisher-Price, and to keep costs low, they used readily available audio tapes that everyone had around. These things weren't that expensive compared to video cassette tapes for your parents' video camera, or more likely your grandparents' video camera, because I don't know anyone whose parents could actually afford a camcorder. It was always somebody's wealthy retired grandparents who would show up with the video camera, shoot a bunch of footage of the kids, and you'd never see that footage again because it would go into some dusty drawer in your grandparents' house, and by the time you ended up with it, nobody had a way to read that technology anymore. Anyway, this is the Fisher-Price PXL2000. This thing was fairly expensive when it came out new, so even though it was designed for kids, again, you kind of had to have the wealthy grandparents to actually see one of these under your Christmas tree. And even these days, I've heard these can still be kind of expensive, although it looks like Christine found this one at Goodwill for $10. I've heard that these are actually desirable by low-resolution film buffs. There are actually film festivals devoted to these. There have been apparently actual movies filmed on these things. So this was something I had not really heard of until Christine sent it to me. So I'm looking forward to opening it up and just seeing what all the fuss was about. This thing looks like it's in great condition. It still has the original packaging, which is a little beat up, but that was always the first thing to get thrown out in my household. So it's nice that it still has that. I'll give you a quick look at some of the box art here, showing off some of the features of this camera. And of course, the happy 90s family using this camera to produce whatever terrible movies they could think of. I say 90s, but this box is actually marked 1987, so this is technically 80s technology, even if it was towards the end of the 80s. Because of the high price, I don't think these ever sold very well. I certainly have never seen one before. I may have seen one of these in a Sears Christmas catalog, but I'm sure I just glossed right over it because I was much more interested in Star Trek action figures and Atari 800s and whatnot. So we have the main camcorder here. We have some cables and adapters. If you ever had a Nintendo or another vintage gaming console, you'll probably recognize this thing. It basically converts video signals to television signals so you could watch your videos on a TV. We have the power supply. Looks like it came with one blank tape and this fancy little stand. Now this thing is essentially a museum piece, so I want to be a little bit careful with it. It looks like it's in good condition, but electronics from this age often have issues. First off, the batteries can leak. Secondly, anything that is recording onto magnetic media, which actually looks like there's a tape in there, so dare I see what somebody recorded on this back in the 80s and 90s. There can be other issues. Things can degrade over time. Electronics can start to go bad. So it's not always a great idea to just fill this with batteries and turn it on. These were also, despite the high price, they weren't made all that well. So like the activation switch here, pretty flimsy. These other buttons, they feel like things are going to fall apart when you push these. So yeah, unfortunately, this is not the highest of quality. Just a couple other quick features here. The viewfinder is just basically a straight pass-through little scope here. You don't actually see what video it's recording. The lens has a high and low setting. All that seems to do is move a little filter section in front of the actual lens pickup. There's a microphone on the front, which is very flimsy. Again, this looks like it's just going to fall off. We have one battery compartment here, which is pretty dirty, as you'd expect from an 80s device. There is not an exploded battery in here, fortunately, but it looks like one has exploded in the past, and there is some corrosion. Now, there's not only that battery compartment, there's another battery compartment down here. Oh, and this does have your classic 1980s battery cancer. So this is pretty much what every electronic device from the 80s looked like after a week of non-use. If you put this in your closet with batteries in it, that's what it would come out as. People often talk about their strongest memory of the 1980s, like the music, the culture, the television. This right here is my strongest memory from the 80s. Now, the good thing about the 1980s is it's so long ago that only two kinds of screws had been invented, so you could actually take apart your own electronics with just a Phillips screwdriver. You didn't have to buy an entire hardware store worth of weird little hex bits. Now, I want to be a little careful taking this apart because, again, the build quality on this is so low that pieces are just held in here by kind of thoughts and prayers. This was designed to be sold to children. I'm sure Fisher-Price hoped that this would get smashed within a month and the grandparents would have to buy them a new one, but yeah, with a little bit of care, I think we can get it apart in at least two pieces. Now, I don't think I mentioned earlier just how Fisher-Price figured out how to put video onto an audio cassette. Well, they did that by a number of tricks, including making the video terrible. It is incredibly low resolution. It's something like 90 by 120 pixels. It's only black and white. It runs the tape about 10 times faster than a normal audio tape so that it can try to cram as much data onto there as possible. So you only get about 11 minutes or so of video. And I think the frame rate is also much worse. It's only about 15 frames per second instead of the standard 24 to 30 frames per second. And of course, these days, almost everything is 60 frames per second. So going from my 4K camcorder to this thing is going to be really interesting if we can get it to work. If you've heard the old saying about somebody's video being so bad that it must have been filmed on a potato, I think this is the potato. All right, I got this stupid thing apart, and there is a ton more corroded battery goo in here, so the battery's kind of leaked everywhere within it. I might take this out to the garage and just blast it with the air compressor for a minute. It's incredibly difficult to get the new batteries in here, and that's not just me complaining. This is apparently a known issue with these. Again, this was designed by what was essentially a cereal company at the time, so they didn't know what they were doing when it came to consumer electronics. This whole thing really has the build quality of a toy that you'd get in a box of cereal, and back in the 1980s, that was reasonably good quality, but still not fantastic. All right, we've given the thing a basic cleanup, we've got new batteries in it, and I don't know how to turn it on. There's actually not an instruction manual in the box with it. The controls on this are really laid out by somebody who had never seen a video camera before. Like, the designer of this had heard about video, but like, what is this grip? You're supposed to hold it like this and film, and I don't quite understand how you're supposed to aim it or operate any of the controls other than the on-off button. I don't know if there's anything on those tapes that came with it, so I'm going to set those aside and I'm going to open up a brand new tape just to play around with the thing first. It may sound like I'm bad-mouthing the PXL2000 a little bit, and yes, I have some thoughts about the build quality and the ergonomics of it, but you know, it's pretty cool for a 1980s product. It's kind of an interesting idea. Now, it wasn't interesting enough or designed well enough to survive very long. I did end up looking this up on Wikipedia, and apparently it was only around for about a year before it just completely went off the market, probably because it was designed poorly, nobody could afford it, nobody could figure out how to use it, and the quality was terrible. But yeah, for a 1980s product aimed at kids, it's pretty fun. I would have enjoyed having one of these when I was a kid. I probably would have broken it immediately, but it still would have been fun for 5 minutes. All right, we have a tape. We are theoretically turned on. Yeah, we might have some power issues here. It's possible that something else corroded in that battery situation that I wasn't able to clean out. So it does have a 12-volt DC input, so maybe we can dispense with batteries completely and just try it from wall power. I just noticed some sparking when I took the new batteries out, so there's definitely something shorted out in there. All right, we are able to play the tape, or at least the motor tries to run. And now it is running. The tape is running. I think we are shooting footage. And people complain when I say footage on a digital camera, but this might be actual footage because it is digital, but it's going onto a tape, physical media. So yeah, we'll see if this looks like anything at all. There are two settings on the lens here. We have high and low, and I think there's just, I'm actually going to pause that. I think high and low are just the light level because this just puts a filter in front of the lens or away from the lens. This is so poorly thought out, there is not even a tripod mount on it, and even the cheapest cameras you could find in the 80s and 90s had tripod mounts. All it is a little piece of plastic threaded for a tripod screw, but No, the designer on this, again, had never seen a camera before, so they didn't bother putting that on there. They did give us this little plastic dingus that sits under the handle, so I guess you could just set it on a table and talk at it. Also not well designed because it kind of permanently aims down, or if you move it back at all, it just tips over. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's not working now. I think maybe the little door here popped loose. It's really flimsy, and it does not want to lock into place or stay locked in place. I have no idea what the beeping means because we didn't get a manual with it. We've used up a little bit of tape, but definitely not a full 11 minutes worth. I am getting it to rewind, so I guess we can try playing that back and see if we got anything out of it. All right, it will sometimes play if I hit play, and sometimes it sits there jammed up. So there's something mechanically funky in here. I don't know what. And I do actually have the peak of 1980s television technology, the Sony Watchman. This is not an LCD screen. This is actually a CRT. This is a cathode ray tube on its side with the phosphor screen here kind of at an angle. So yeah, this is a tiny pocket CRT TV. This thing is ridiculous. I never use it for anything, but it seems like a perfect opportunity. I also have my Hacker F1 Portapack set up to listen to analog TV, so one of these should be able to hear the thing. It will not reliably work. Sometimes it will play, sometimes it will record, sometimes it will do absolutely nothing. So I've not been able to get it to play back when I have one of the TV receivers going, so we can't see if it's actually doing anything. I'm probably gonna have to open it up, lubricate all the little moving parts, and see if that helps. I pulled this out today to do a quick video thinking this will be great. I can just film this weird old camera. We can make some stupid low-res videos with it for a laugh. It'll be an easy video. Yeah, they're never easy. This old stuff never works quite right in the first try. Yeah, there's definitely some goo in here on the little gears. So I think the motor is just having trouble spinning stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna give it another good cleaning, maybe a little lubrication in some strategic spots on the cassette deck, and then hopefully it'll work after that because I really don't want to take the rest of this apart anymore. That little blue thing right in the center there is the lens, and it looks really bad to me. It looks like it's all corroded up or there's something wrong with it, but apparently they are supposed to be blue like that. I am really not sure what's going on with this. There seem to be multiple problems happening. Sometimes the little motor doesn't spin at all. Other times the motor spins, but nothing else in here spins. So it seems like there's an issue with the motor, and there's also an issue with some of the linkage. This little belt here seems pretty loose, so that belt might just be worn out. All right, one problem here is this little idler wheel seems to be holding this piece too strongly. So this maybe is not working the way it should. So we can get the thing to play if we take tension off the idler here. It's still not playing at the correct speed though, or at least I don't think it is. All right, we've got the thing sort of outputting something onto the TV screen. It's basically just static, but we are getting something here. It is outputting video. That's my finger in front of the lens. So that's, yeah, it doesn't look like much. It's terrible quality. Like I said, the lens is probably kind of dirty, and I'm having to sit here spinning the idler wheel on the cassette deck to make it even stop beeping at me. Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel, 1987 toy camcorder style. So the worst part of this little lens is this green or blue layer, which is totally decomposed. If I peer through this at a light, I can just see spots. It's all wrinkled and crumpled. That blue layer of glass or plastic is destroyed. Now, I took it apart a little bit further and got the actual lens out of there. The green piece, that tiny green square, is actually an infrared filter. So that just keeps the camera from getting overloaded by infrared light from the sun. I tore apart this old flip camera and tried salvaging the infrared filter out of here. Unfortunately, it's a little bit bigger. It doesn't quite fit, even though it's basically the same cheap screw mount lens. I've been trying the Hacker F1, but I'm having no luck with it. Apparently, I don't understand enough about how analog TV works. I've been going through the analog TV receiver app and getting nothing on channel 3 or channel 4. All right, well, let's just try this thing without the infrared filter and see if it works any better. Oh, wow, yeah, that is noticeably better. That is starting to approach almost being a usable image, or at least usable to a child in the 1980s. Yeah, you can actually see who I am. You can kind of see more motion, more detail. And this thing is freaking out at me again. I only get a little bit of time on it here before something goes catastrophically wrong with it. Hi, and welcome back to the Save It for Parts channel. Today we're filming this on a potato. While this thing is technically working, we still have a ways to go if we want to get it working really well, and I don't know how much effort I'm actually going to want to put into this. We still don't have audio. I did try here, but when I turn up the volume on the TV, all I get is static, so there's probably something wrong with the little microphone, or I'm just not using it correctly. I'm also still not getting the tape to run, and it does keep freaking out here when I try to run it without a tape, even just in the little preview mode that it has here. Yeah, there's still some motor issues, there's some drivetrain issues, there are all kinds of problems with this, and right now it is running without the IR filter, so really can't use it outside without that. I'm trying to get the thing back together so I can do some different stuff with it, and it is just continuing to be a headache. Now I can't get the tape deck door to eject, I can't get it to open, so I have to take the whole thing apart again, and it's really fiddly to get everything apart and back together correctly without wrecking it. Yeah, I wanted to like this. I wanted to say this was a really cool, fun, unique piece of technology, but I can see why it's unique, why it's so rare. It sucks. This thing was terrible when it came out. It's terrible now, and yeah, aside from a couple obscure directors who have made obscure movies with this, I don't see this being useful for anything. Yes, it has a lot of issues just due to age, but honestly, this thing had a lot of issues built in. It was not designed well, and age has not improved that in any way. I feel bad saying bad things about it because it was a gift, and the person who sent it to me was hoping I could get some of the old videos off it, even though it's not their video. They were hoping I could preserve whatever footage was on here from the 80s and 90s. And it's sure not looking like I can, because I can't get the stupid thing to work long enough to get anything out of it. Every time I take this thing apart, more dirt and sand pours out of it. I don't know where it's coming from. I've already hit it with the air compressor. I've already cleaned everything I could get to, but somehow there's just more and more garbage just disintegrating out of it as I work with it. All right, I've assembled and disassembled this thing about 18 times now, and I am sick of looking at it, but we have the tape deck ejection working again. I think we might have play working. It does work for video out, so we can use it as a really inconvenient security camera, or I suppose if we hooked up some kind of RF recorder system on there, we could actually record using the video chip, which I guess is what a lot of people do. They skip the audio tape capability completely, and they just record to a DVR or something. And that kind of makes sense because the audio tape interface mechanism just doesn't seem very good. It's not very robust. It doesn't work reliably, and it was kind of a janky situation to start with. So unfortunately, those audio tapes are not the best recording medium. Well, unfortunately, I am running out of time, energy, and patience for the PXL2000 here. It's an interesting gimmick from the 1980s, but unfortunately, it just was not designed or built very well. It did not stand the test of time, and it just has too many issues for me to deal with. I think we need a new motor, we need new belts, we need a new infrared filter, we need to fix the audio, there are some loose wires, we need to redo the battery connections. There are just too many issues that have built up over time, and sadly, it is not all that interesting or useful. Even restored, even fully operating, I can't see a use for this thing. I would never use it. It would sit on a shelf. I could put another $100 in new parts into it from eBay, but I really don't see the point, unfortunately. I do feel bad. I told Christine I would try to get this working, and I would try to get the videos off of those old tapes. Even though they're not her tapes, she was curious what's on there, but I just cannot get it to work reliably enough to get anything off of there. So I think I'm gonna have to wrap this one up, put this thing aside. I will contact some folks I know who know what these are and might be more interested in restoring this or doing something else with it. If that comes about, if that happens, maybe we'll do a collaboration in the future. Maybe I'll do a follow-up on this. But for now, I think it's going to go back onto the tech mulch pile. Maybe it'll come up again in the future. I know this wasn't a very successful video. We did get some success with the thing. We were able to get it to output some video. We were able to look at the video quality on there. But I couldn't do much else with it. Unfortunately, we can't really record the tapes reliably. We can't play from the tapes reliably. And yeah, I have just been spending way too much time taking this apart, putting it back together, fiddling with stuff, messing around with it, adjusting things, and I have to wrap it up. Now, I do have plenty of other stuff on my vintage tech to-do pile, which is partly why I have to set this aside so I can work on something else. So stay tuned, and we might do some other interesting videos on other obsolete technology that hopefully works a little bit better than this one. If you did sit through this whole video till the end, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.